Louisiana State Police Trooper Triet Lee, and I apologize if I mispronounced the name.
Mr. Chairman, a point of order.
You have a point of order, Representative Hughes? I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to clarify on the record, when witnesses come to the table and testify, and by filling out that white card, they are under oath. Is that correct?
They are under oath. That is correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Hughes. All right, Mr. Lee, can you please, or Officer Lee, can you please have a seat to tell us your name for the record?
Good morning, sir. Good morning, ma'am. Triet Lee with the Louisiana State Police.
Thank you for being here. Mr. Lee, I'm going to turn it over to Representative Landry for some questions.
Right here.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Mr. Lee. Thanks for coming today. My name is Mandy Landry. I'm a representative from New Orleans, and I'm a longtime lawyer. So I'm going to walk you through some introductory questions. If you need to take a break at any point, let me know. If you don't know the answer to something, that's perfectly fine. We're just looking for some information. I understand that your role at the state police is very specific, so I won't go into a lot of other detail. But first, can you just tell us your educational background?
Bachelor degree in computer engineering,
And where did you go?
LSU,
LSU. What year was that?
1995.
Okay.
Oh, no, 2003, sorry. Yes.
Okay. And when did you start working for the state police?
2007, I started working for the DPS, Department of Public Safety, for data processing.
So 15 years?
About that, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And what is your current title?
Information technology,
Director or?
yeah, the technical support specialist.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Has that has not always been your role?
Yes, it always been my
It
role.
always has been your role?
Yes, ma'am.
So you've not had any other job with the state police?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Currently, who are your supervisors or your chain of command?
My current supervisor is Mr. Meister T and Captain David Staley.
Davis.
Staley,
Staley.
S-T-E-L-L-Y.
Okay. And if you remember in early 2019, who were your supervisors or your chain of command?
Before 2019 will be Mr. Meister T. 2019 Mr. Meister T.
Okay. Thank you. And real quickly, have you ever been involved in any lawsuit regarding the state police?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Getting to today, did you do any preparation for your testimony today?
I'm yet ready for you to ask me a question and answer the question.
Did you review any documents in preparation for today?
No, ma'am.
Did you speak to anyone at state police in preparation for today?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Did anyone at state police attempt to speak to you about your testimony today?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. One second. Yeah, okay. I'm going to turn now to the activities that we're looking at in this committee meeting. As you know, it's been reported that the cell phones of 3 troopers were wiped since this incident happened, and that would be Reeves, Kane, and Noel. Is that your understanding?
Yes, ma'am.
And were you the individual who, and I'll use the terms wiped or sanitized, which is what we've heard. Were you the individual who wiped or sanitized those 3 phones?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm going to go one by one and see what you remember about what happened back then. But I believe his first name is Mike Noel. Do you remember who that is?
He was my chief of staff.
He was your chief of staff?
Yes, ma'am. He was chief of staff. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
And do you remember around what month or what year that you sanitized his phone?
Probably in 2020.
Okay. And who directed you to wipe his phone?
No one, ma'am. Basically, he called me. He said he won't turn in the phone. And so let me tell you the story.
Sure.
In about 2009, 2010, my former coworker trained me how to activate and transfer the information. Like if the new employee when the phone get the phone and give to them, set up the phone for them for the BlackBerry and iPhone at that time. And then he teach me how to set up, transfer, and wipe, because he told me all the data is critical. You need to wipe, and there was no policy for it.
There was no policy
No,
for
ma'am.
it?
He didn't tell me any policy about it.
And this you said was in 09, 2010?
09. Yes, ma'am.
And was there any update on phone policy from then until about 2020?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So you said Mr. Newell, I'm sorry, I don't know his actual title, came to you to turn in his phone. Why was he turning in his phone?
I have no idea. He just called me, or his secretary called me, say, I want to turn in my phone. Usually when he called me, sometimes I come in here helping him with all like computer stuff. So I don't know what he need.
So the phone was just given to you in what word? Excuse me. Did they ask you to wipe it, or he just said, "I'm turning it in"?
He said, I am turning in.
Okay. And so in this time period, or rather prior to 2020, were there other instances where people turned in their phone to you that you wiped it?
Before June 2021, yes, I did. Factory reset, yes. After June 2021, I have not.
You said factory reset. That's so a new person can have it with no old information.
Yes, ma'am. That's correct.
And on average, how many phones were turned in per year?
I do not get
Like 3 or like 20 or?
probably about 20, between 25 50.
So quite a few.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that because people were leaving state police?
No, they are people who retire, people who do not want the phone anymore. They don't want to carry two phones, and people with their phone broken.
Okay. Now, when someone turned in, so most of us have iPhones, and like when I get a new phone, my information is downloaded on it from the cloud. Was there any attempt to delete information on these phones in the cloud?
I do not have that access to it because the iCloud is their personal password.
So it would be possible that on the phones you physically wiped, there could be information in a cloud somewhere still.
I cannot answer that question.
Right. Okay. Possible. Was there ever an attempt prior to, I think you said June 2021, to back up the information on phones that were turned in?
After July 2021, my captain told me I need to back it up.
And that would be Captain Davis?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. But before that, there were no
ma'am.
backups. Was there ever an instance where, whether there was a criminal investigation or a lawsuit, that, for example, you received a subpoena for information on a wiped phone?
No, ma'am.
You've never received
I
anything
never
like that? Okay. Back to Noel. So he gave you the phone to turn in, you wiped it, and then it was put back in circulation?
Yes, ma'am.
Was he handed a new phone?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Mr. Kane, again, I'm apologize for not remembering people's titles right now. What happened with his phone?
Same thing. He called me. He wanted to turn his phone in.
Do you remember when that was?
About 2020. In 2020.
In 2020. He called you himself?
Yes, him or his secretary calling.
Okay. And they just said, we're turning in our phone.
Yes, ma'am. That's correct.
Would it be accurate to say that troopers knew that when they turned in a phone, it would be wiped?
Basically, when I wiped, I showed them that I wiped the phone in front of them.
They knew when they, excuse me, is it your understanding that everyone knew that it was your policy to wipe phones turned in?
I do not know that if they know about, but I did wipe and I showed it to them. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you're not sure what the troopers would have understood?
Right.
Okay. And by the way, is there a log of all phones that are state police property?
Before June 2021, no, there was no log. After June 2021, yes, there's a log.
Well, I mean, what would happen if someone said they lost their phone or something to that effect? Would they just be given a new one?
If they lost the phone, they will send me the report, the incident report, and from their supervisor, the XO or the captain, and I will give them another phone. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, because the reason I'm asking is if they're state property, there should be a log somewhere. For example, all these chairs we're sitting in are on a list somewhere belonging to the state of Louisiana. Was there no list before 2021 regarding the phones purchased?
No, ma'am. There's no list.
Okay.
Because my former coworker said it's under $1,000, so we do not keep track of the device.
Okay.
Yes,
That's good to know. Okay, back to Doug Kane. So your memory is that he or his secretary said he wanted to turn in his phone.
Yes,
And you said that was in 2020. Do you remember the early in the year, end of the year?
I do not know, ma'am.
Okay. So if there were no logs until 2021, was there anything on email sent about turning in a phone? Did you make a note in a notebook, or was there anything?
No, ma'am. I did not know.
So you would not know right now, or you would not be able to determine if there's any trooper who has Doug Kane's old phone.
That's correct. No.
Someone could have it.
Someone couldn't have it.
Okay. There's not even a list somewhere of serial numbers.
No, ma'am. There's no list.
Okay. The former head, Kevin Reeves. What happened with his phone?
Same thing. Himself or his secretary called me to come to his office. When I show up, he said, I want to turn in my phone.
Okay. And do you remember when that was?
2020.
Did these three people contact you close in time about turning in their phones?
I do not remember the time.
Of when they asked you? You don't remember?
That's correct. I don't remember.
And I just want to ask this again. Is it possible an email was sent about any of these phones being turned in?
No, ma'am. There's no email.
No email. Everything happened by phone?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. It's also my understanding that many troopers, including Reeves and others, used, in addition to their state police phone, they used a personal phone. Were you ever asked to wipe or sanitize anyone's personal phone?
No, ma'am. Never.
If you were asked to do that, what would be your response?
If they ask me to wipe their personal, I'll make sure they send me an email for my record.
Is that because it's not state property?
Yes, ma'am.
But you don't remember anyone asking you to wipe a personal phone?
No one asked me to wipe the phone. That's
Okay.
all.
Were you ever asked to provide, troubleshooting or tech assistance with a personal cell phone?
I do not troubleshoot on personal phone because that's their personal phone device.
Okay. Do you know how many, I don't want to say how many, do you know if there are many troopers who also use a second personal phone, or is that something that only perhaps a few people did?
I do not know. For example, like I have my personal phone. I have the state phone. So I don't know what they have.
Okay. Did you also provide tech support for state-issued laptops?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you the only person who does that?
No, and OTS also too.
Okay. Let me clarify something else. Are you the only state employee who deals with wiping of the cell phones?
Yes, ma'am. That's
Okay.
correct.
But laptops are a little more complicated. There are other people who work with the laptops.
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
And these are state-issued laptops only.
Yes, ma'am.
And what office was that?
Office technology,
Okay.
OTS support services.
Are you the director of?
No,
or-
I am
no.
not. I am work for the Louisiana State Police.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
You work in conjunction with them on laptops?
Yes, ma'am.
And if a trooper came to you with a problem on a laptop, you would refer it to that office?
Yes, ma'am. That's correct.
Okay. Has anyone ever asked you to sanitize a laptop?
No, ma'am. I asked them to contact OTS by calling the help desk.
So similarly, if a trooper is retiring or they just need to turn in their laptop for whatever reason, what would happen?
They will have to give it to their supervisor, and their supervisor contact to the OTS for their laptop.
So what would your involvement with laptops be?
For advice and consulting, what need to be done. Yes, ma'am.
So would it be safe to say you help them as much as you can, and if you can't, you refer it?
That's correct.
Okay. And do you keep a log of laptops?
After June 2021, I do keep a log on it.
Okay. So there's a program, I believe it's Axon. Is that how you say it? The video camera program. Do you provide troubleshooting for that program?
No, ma'am, I do not have access to the Exxon at all.
Is that because, or do you know why you don't have access to it?
No, I do not know.
Okay. Has anyone ever asked you for assistance on it?
No, when they ask me, I refer back to my coworker on it.
Who's that?
At that time will be Lieutenant Chad. He's the captain now.
What's his name?
Chad, C-H-A-D.
Okay. That was who you referred to at the time?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so you sometimes did get questions about Axon and you just referred it to
That's
him?
correct. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you remember who may have asked you about Axon?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Have you ever performed any troubleshooting work on, for example, body cameras or the cameras in the cars?
No, ma'am.
Do you have any professional interaction with the troopers' vehicles?
No, ma'am. I do not have professional.
So is your work for the state mostly limited, it seems, to cell phones, laptop troubleshooting, and what else would that be?
And consulting, if they need some advice on like how to set up the conference room, then I can help them advise them how to set up the conference room. Yes.
Okay. And your direct supervisor right now is who?
Mr. Mike City.
Okay. I think that's everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Landry. I do want to clarify something, though. You testified that y'all did not have a policy on data sanitization?
Yes, at the time, 2009, my former co-worker did not tell me anything about that.
There is a policy. It's ITSTD 1-17, data sanitation standards and requirements. And one of the things in that policy, this is from the documents you gave us, is that you have to create a sanitation log record. And this policy is from 2014.
But like I mentioned, I was training for my co-worker at 2009, 2010.
Right, but then they updated the policy in 2014. I would assume they would give you a copy of the policy in 2014. No?
2014, I was not with the state. I was with another company
Okay, so when you came back
in 2015.
in 15 and they didn't give you an updated policy manual?
No, sir.
You were not aware that you were supposed to create a sanitation log?
That's correct. Nobody told me anything.
And there's a sanitation status code.
No, sir. Nobody mentioned.
It's MRS. And that there's a label device with the LPAA label. Are you not aware of that as well?
That's correct. I did not aware of that.
Who is responsible for making sure you have all the policies and procedures?
For the new one,
Well, just in general.
my current supervisor and the captain.
Who was it in 2015 when you came in?
2015, I worked with Gammon and under different supervisor.
When you went back to this department, who was in charge of policies and procedures?
Mr. Mike City.
Mike City. Okay. And to be clear, how'd you find out about the committee today?
I get the when I come to work 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago. My coworker told me you're on video, and I like your name on video. I'm like, what video? And they told me, yeah.
Have you talked to any of your supervisors about coming here and testify today?
I talked to my supervisor that I'm going to be here today. Yes, sir.
And did y'all discuss the sanitization of the phones at all?
He told me to tell the truth.
Good.
Yes, sir.
And you've had no contact at all with current,
No, sir.
not yesterday or anything like that?
No, sir.
Thank you. Representative Marcel.
Thank you. I think they just about covered most of the questions that I had to ask you, but I do have a couple that I don't know if I heard you say. You mentioned that they would typically turn in these phones when they were retiring, just got tired of carrying two phones. Is that the only reasons?
That the reason, or yes, ma'am, that's the reason, yes.
Do you recall what reason Reeves gave you for
No,
turning?
ma'am. He just say, I want to turn my phone.
Okay. Do you recall what reason Kane gave you for turning the phone?
He just told me to say, I want to turn my phone.
So all three, Noel included, just said, we want to turn in our phone.
Yes, ma'am.
Neither of them were preparing to retire and just turning in, right?
Yes,
Is that
ma'am.
accurate?
That's correct.
Do you know how long each of them had those phones that they turned in? What was the time limit?
I don't,
You
I
don't know?
I don't remember.
Do you know none of them? You don't know how long they had them,
No, ma'am.
correct?
I do not know. No, ma'am.
So would you agree that they all turned it in within the same time period and same time frame?
I remember they turned in sometime in 2020. I don't remember.
In what time frame you think? Within 2 months of each other?
I do not.
Did you take a guess at it?
I-
Just 2020, the end of 2020, the beginning? When was it?
I do not remember exactly the
And
month.
you didn't keep any records of that?
That's correct. I do not keep record.
You
Because
did
of,
not keep records?
yes, ma'am.
The state police did not keep records of when they sanitized phones,
Yes,
right?
ma'am. Yes.
Okay. And you already said that. Did you say chief of staff was Noel at the time?
That's correct. Yes, ma'am. And then chief of staff Bob Brown. So I don't know which time. I don't remember what time that.
So would you say that he had authority over you, right?
Yes, he the chief of staff. Yes, ma'am.
Right. So you were unaware of the policy, the sanitation policy that was issued in 2014 that was updated, right?
That's correct because I did not come back until 2015.
I mean, I understand that, but when you come to a job, they typically give you procedures and policies to follow in that role.
When
Would
it-
you agree?
Yes, ma'am. But when
Do
it,
you have policies on other things that you do?
yes, ma'am. When it came back in 2015, I worked with gaming at that time.
Gaming?
Gaming, like video poker.
Gaming.
Yes, ma'am.
You work with gaming.
Yes.
And so, do you believe that gaming didn't have this policy either? I mean,
Nobody give me no policy on it.
nobody gave you a policy. So what were you given when you came back in 2015? Were you given anything, or they just told you to go to work?
They give me the policy on all the standard policy.
This
Like-
is a part of the standard policy,
like
though. So
that-
they left this part out.
That I believe that the policy from OTS. This is DPS.
Okay. And you were you ever asked to sign a non-disclosure agreement
No,
as it
ma'am.
relates? You
But-
never signed one?
No, ma'am. Never said one.
And no one went over your testimony for today?
No one.
No one gave you anything about what we were going to be looking for?
That's correct. No one asked.
Just your coworker. Who you said your coworker told you
My-
that you was on the video? Who was that?
Yeah, my coworker told me I'm on a video.
Who was that?
Lieutenant William.
Lieutenant Williams. He just said you on the video,
Yes, correct.
and they're gonna want to talk to you.
Yes.
Is that what he said?
Yes, ma'am.
And nothing else.
Nothing else.
You didn't see it in the news. You didn't read it in the paper. You didn't see it.
I just saw the news about the case. I didn't go to detail.
You didn't see it in detail.
Right.
Okay. Well, I just find it odd that you would come to work and they wouldn't give you a policy of something that you were over. Typically, when people go to work and they take jobs, they tell you the procedure in which to follow. And now we have state police that don't have a policy in place. And you say you're not over the body cams, right?
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
You don't do that.
No, ma'am.
Well, thank goodness you didn't wipe any of those clean, right? Do you believe that some of that information may still be in the clouds, and you said you didn't have any knowledge of that?
I don't have any knowledge on that.
Any knowledge of that? So where are these phones now?
In
What are the devices?
in the Louisiana State Police building, the headquarters.
So you still have them?
I do not have any more.
Pardon me?
The IA has it.
Internal. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So they weren't reissued to another trooper. None of these phones.
I do not recall, and I don't remember if I issued the same phone to people on their phone.
So there is nothing in place when a phone, let me ask it a different way. When you reissue a phone to a new trooper or someone else, is that documented?
No, ma'am. Not before June 2021. No, ma'am.
So there's no documentation, no serial numbers. You know, that this strikes me as really odd because every piece of little raggedy furniture that I have in my office, the state typically asks me once a year to write down all the serial numbers. They want to know where it is because it's state property, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And so y'all don't have to fill out anything like that?
As I mentioned earlier, the device was under $1,000, and my former coworker said I don't have to keep track on it.
Your former coworker said
Yes,
that?
ma'am.
Okay, so if it's under $1,000, you don't have to keep it.
I don't have to keep. I don't keep track.
Track.
Yes, ma'am.
And what's the value of the phones?
It was free, $0.
Pardon me?
Free?
Free?
Yes, ma'am.
So you mean free?
The provider give us the phone for free.
But there is a value to the phone, though.
I do
isn't
not know how much the device costs.
Regardless of whether they got it in a grant or whatever, there is a value to the phone. It has value, right?
Yes, ma'am. But if the value will be under $1,000, still under $1,000.
It would still be under 1,000.
Yeah, correct. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Representative Marcel. Representative Billy has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Lee, good morning.
Good morning, ma'am.
So you were employed with state police in your current position in 2016 when there was the Colonel Edmonston Las Vegas side trip investigation. Isn't that correct?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
And isn't it true as early as 2016, if not before, the issue of state police text messages being a public record, which should not be destroyed, was acknowledged publicly by state police, in fact, then Major Doug Kane?
Okay.
Are you aware of that?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Now, you've testified about Captain David Stelly, but your supervisor when these phones were wiped clean was then Captain Lamar Davis. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, at that time.
And you would agree that the state police is a paramilitary organization that follows a chain of command, does it not?
I don't understand the question. Can you?
Okay. You understand a chain of command and that Captain Lamar Davis was your supervisor?
Yes, ma'am, correct.
And at the time you destroyed these public records, you didn't discuss with then Captain Davis that you were going to wipe these phones clean?
No, ma'am, because no one told me this is the evidence. No one said anything about it.
Now, Mr. Lee, I'm not asking you the content of any attorney discussion you may have had before today's testimony, because any discussions you would have had with an attorney are privileged. But is it your testimony that you did not speak to an attorney in advance of today's testimony?
No, ma'am, I did not.
And is it your testimony that you did not speak to any House or Senate representative before today's testimony?
No, ma'am. I know.
Mr. Lee, I'm going to remind you that you're under oath.
Yes, ma'am.
Isn't it true, Mr. Lee, that the state police never reissue or put back into circulation old or used phones?
Can you repeat that?
Isn't it true, Mr. Lee, the state police never reissue or put back into circulation old or used phones?
That during the hurricane, if we don't have the phone, we can reuse the phone back. For example, like during COVID, all the devices are out. We have to reuse the phone.
But you don't, these phones were not put back into circulation, were they, Mr. Lee?
I do not recall.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Vilio. Representative Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just got a few questions for you, Mr. Lee, because I think Representative Vilio and the others have answered it. But you said a couple of things that caught my attention. These phones, did they have, because they were state issued phones, did they have barcodes or any kind of unique identification markers on them?
No barcode, no, sir.
No barcode.
Oh, they have the barcode, yes.
They did have the
Yes.
barcode.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if they had a barcode, you didn't log that anywhere?
No, sir. Because like I mentioned, my coworker didn't ask me keep log on it. 2009.
All right, but you would have been able to identify them in some way.
But I do not know which one their device.
All right. Well, let me ask it this way: when they issued the phones and they had a barcode, did you make a log of who had what phone based on the barcode?
After July 2021, yes, I keep track. Yes, sir.
So I guess the question is this: when somebody lost a phone, you said if somebody lost a phone, they would have to do some incident report. You couldn't tie that back to the phone by using the barcode?
No, sir. I do not.
So what was the purpose of having the barcode?
That I don't know that from the manufacturer they put a barcode in there.
Okay. So let me ask this. You said IA has these phones. Why would IA have these phones?
I have no idea, sir.
They came and did they come and get them from you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And they didn't tell you why they got them.
No, sir.
But these phones, the phones of Doug Kane, Mike Noel, and Kevin Reeves are all in the possession of Internal Affairs.
All the phone that I factory set, and including the new one at the IA
So any phone is with IA
at the moment. Yes, sir.
at the moment. Was that always the case?
No, sir.
Okay. So when did that start?
They came in to me yesterday and they said they want all the phone.
So they came yesterday
Yes, sir.
and got all the phones.
Yes, sir.
So prior to yesterday, you had these phones where you had access to them.
Yes.
But yes, who came yesterday?
Sergeant Richard Buckland.
Butler.
Buckland. Bucklan. Buckland.
So Buckland came from IA and got all the phones from you and took them to IA.
So basically, Sergeant Buckland came to see my captain. My captain called me, go get all the device and give to IA.
And give to IA.
Yes, sir.
All right. And you have no idea why that happened.
That's correct.
All right. What's the purpose? Do you understand the purpose of IA, of Internal Affairs?
Yes, sir.
And what's your understanding of what they do?
They investigate or they're looking for something.
They're looking for something. So is it safe to assume that they're looking for something on those phones?
I have no idea what.
Well, why else would they have them?
I have you.
All right. I think Representative Marcel asked you about the time frame. I mean, isn't it true that Colonel Reeves, Mike Noel, and Doug Kane turned their phones in somewhat close proximity of time?
I do not remember the timeline.
You don't remember? Well, how do you remember it was 2020?
Because that I canceled the service.
I'm sorry?
I canceled the service. Cancel all the service on 2020.
You canceled all the services on those phones in 2020.
Yes,
So if you know when you canceled the services, you can't tell me what month you canceled the services in?
No, I don't. I have to go back my email and look for the date.
Okay, so you got access to your email?
No, yes, sir.
Well, let's go ahead. I'm gonna give you some time. Go ahead and take a look for me.
But it been 2000. I don't think my email can go back to it.
Well, we'll see. Let's go ahead. Let's see what's going on. And if it can't, we'll call you back another time once you're able to do it. But go ahead. I'm gonna give you some time to look.
No, sir.
Okay, so you do have. So I think somebody asked you if you had some records. You said you didn't, but you do have some records as far as email that somebody can retrieve from when you canceled the service on those phones to see when they were actually sanitized. Correct?
Right.
All right. Now, isn't it true that you? Let me ask you this way: Why did you tell somebody that this was unusual? That the sanitizing of these phones was different than the rest? Why did you say that?
What do you mean?
I don't know. That's what I was told you said. You didn't say that?
No.
Did you find anything unusual or strange about the sanitizing of these phones?
No, sir.
All right.
They are my boss, and I treat everybody the same. When they want to turn in their phone, I would factory reset.
All right. So if somebody said that, you would dispute that, right?
Right.
All right.
Before July 2021.
No, but I'm talking about these three phones in particular. You didn't find it strange in the proximity of time that they came and wanted their phones sanitized?
No, sir.
All right. Let me ask you this: Did you inspect the phones before you sanitized them?
No, sir.
Well, when I say inspect, did you take a physical look at them? I mean, did you see them? Were you able to look at the phones before you sanitized?
I hold the phone, yes, sir.
You hold the phone in your hand,
yes,
right?
Sir. Yes, sir. Correct.
All right. So as to Mike Noel's phone, how did it look?
It's an iPhone. I don't know what color, but an iPhone.
All right, it was just a regular phone.
Yes, sir.
All right. So, how about with I think I just asked you about Noel. So how about Reeves? When you looked at his phone,
Same thing. An iPhone.
just an iPhone.
Yes, sir.
All right, and the same for Doug Kane.
Same thing.
Same thing. All right, just a regular iPhone.
Yes, sir.
No distinguishable marks or cracks or damages or anything like that, right?
That's correct.
All right. So they were perfectly good looking phones, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. So from that perspective, you don't find it strange that phones that weren't damaged needed to be turned in?
No, sir.
All right.
They're my boss.
All right, they're your boss. They just tell you. So they didn't mention anything to you about defects or the software glitchy or anything like that, did they?
No, sir. They did not.
All right, so it wouldn't have been anything like that. No reason because of any type of software glitch.
That's correct.
No, because I mean, I just traded my phone in. The phone I had before I thought had a little software glitch in it, so I traded in for a different one and couldn't get it fixed with a patch. So it wasn't anything like that, right?
That's correct.
All right. So we had three perfectly fine phones, okay, that they just said we want to turn them in.
That's correct.
All right. All right. So, Mr. Lee, I don't have any more questions for you at this time. All right, but I do have some follow-up questions for you. So I do want you, hopefully between now, we're probably going to be here for a while. So we got some other witnesses to get through. So I want you, before we leave here today, to get with somebody at State Police and get those emails for me from 2020 so that we can see when you canceled those phones. Can you do that for me?
Yes, sir.
All right, I need that done. Thank you.
I'm going to represent Marcel real quick for a follow-up.
I don't know if you said this, but is it possible for you to call the phone company to find out when those phones were canceled? Who's the service with?
I have to go back and look on the.
Who's the service with?
It could be AT&T or Verizon.
AT&T or Verizon. Y'all use two
Yes, ma'am.
different,
Yes, ma'am.
and you don't recall?
I don't recall. I have to go back.
You didn't look at it before you came here, and you knew we were going to be asking you questions about it?
No, ma'am.
Why not?
I'm just come here, answer the question. If you have any another question, I will provide back another question.
Right, but I'm saying you knew that we were going to be asking you about the sanitizing of these phones. Why wouldn't you look, at least see when you turned them in or who the carrier was?
Because I don't know what you're going to ask me question.
But you did know we were going to ask you about the sanitizing of these phones.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's related to it.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you could call the company and find out.
I can go back to my email and provide information.
Okay, or You could contact them. Their offices, the secretaries, the ones that gave you the call, you say, and find out who the carrier was?
I have to
Do
go.
you think they know?
I have to go back and look for the phone number.
Look for the phone number.
Yes, ma'am.
You don't think that within your department you could find out who the carrier was without going back through a million emails? You don't think? Because those are your bosses. You keep saying that. Those were your supervisors. So those were your supervisors. So I do what my supervisors ask me to do. Right?
Right.
Isn't that accurate?
Yes.
So if your supervisor asks you to do something, you wouldn't be looking at a policy. You're just going to do what your supervisor asks you to do.
Right.
Right?
Yes, ma'am.
That's the bottom line, right?
Yes, ma'am.
I figured that was the bottom line. That's what I figured. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Marcel. Representative Bacala.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Lee, just if you would, kind of describe the process. I mean, when you pick a name, when somebody came in, did they mail the phone to you? Did they hand walk it in? Did you sit down with them? I think you said that you would sit down with someone. But describe that process, the physical process.
So a trooper, when they receive a new device, when they want a new device, they send the paperwork all the way up to the chain command, to the chief of staff for his signature on it.
Well, in particular, I'm talking about the three phones that we're talking about, Colonel Reeves, Kane, Noel. I mean, did they walk into your office with the phone in hand? Did they send it by messenger? Did they mail it to you? And I think you said earlier that as someone sat there, you would delete all the information, show them that it was deleted, and that would be. But in these particular cases, were they present when the phones were sanitized?
Yes, I came to their office. Yes, sir.
Okay, so you went to their office, sat down. I guess they probably had to open it up with password, hand it to you,
Right.
and then what would you do, particularly to the phone?
So basically, for the iPhone, I went to the general, and then go all the way settings general, and go all the way down to reset,
Okay.
and click on reset factory. Yes, sir.
Okay, so and then you said you would show them that the phone is
Yes, sir.
clean,
Yes.
and then I guess you would walk out with the phone.
Yes, sir.
Any receipts exchanged, anything like that?
No, sir.
Okay, and then the phone went, and you would put it on a shelf somewhere.
I put it in the box.
Okay, so in a box and then stored somewhere.
Right.
All right. In any of these cases where another phone was another phone reissued to replace the turned-in phone?
On the same three people?
Yeah.
I do not remember.
Well, did it? Okay, you don't remember if anybody got a replacement phone, only that you took a phone?
I replay the phone, but I will not use their phone to replay for other people.
No. I'm asking, did anyone say, wipe this one, give me a new one?
No, sir.
Okay, so these were phones that people had but decided to turn them in and not get a replacement phone.
Yes, sir.
Do you know how long these phones had been in issue?
No, sir.
I mean, had someone had a phone for 10 years and then decided they didn't want one anymore? Or how long had a phone been issued to the individuals who, how long were they comfortable having the phone?
I do not keep track before June, July 2021.
But fair to say that at some point, for some period of time, they had state-issued phones. Then at some point in time when it turned in, they did not ask for replacement. So they went from having a state-issued phone to not.
Yeah.
Okay. And the phones were you kept them in a box. What was storage condition? I mean, were they locked up?
No, sir.
All right. And when someone turns in a phone, and I think you alluded to this, and they don't get a new phone reissued to them, that phone number, the phone number itself is no longer in use. So you're canceling the service, which means the phone number is no longer a valid number within your system.
Correct.
You're not reissuing a phone number.
No, sir.
So the something of an exact date and I'm trying to determine that as per everybody here. you might see the cancellation of service date, which may reflect a month's period of time or something like that. But at the same time, if you access the actual phone records, you should see the last time a phone call was made or answered if you looked at the actual phone records, I'm assuming, which would give perhaps an exact date when something was taken out of service.
Yes, sir.
Typically, and you mentioned earlier that you would dispose of some phones, but these, why were these not disposed of? It sounds like maybe typically if a phone is being turned in, you might be surplusing it out to, I guess, the state property.
Yes, sir.
Well, the ultimate fate of a phone is typically it's going to get
To
sold
surplus.
off as surplus.
Yes, sir.
Is there any particular reason why these phones were not turned over to surplus?
No, sir.
Okay. All right, that's it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Bakla. Representative Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. Mr. Lee, I noticed that there's some policies you can recall pretty quickly, some policies you can't. When you were hired, did you have to read the policy manual and sign and acknowledge that you received the policies?
Yes, sir, but nothing to do with the cellular phone.
Okay. And as policies were updated, did you have to acknowledge that you read and understood the policy?
Yes, sir, but the policy that you told me that was from OTS.
Okay. So you never had to acknowledge. That was never part of.
That was later on.
Okay.
In July 2021, my captain sent an email on that. Yes,
You've been a member of state police now, of staff, for 15 years. Is that accurate?
about yes, sir.
Okay. How often do you receive professional development or training? Do you receive that yearly, monthly, quarterly? Never?
I have not.
Never. So in 15 years, you have not received any professional development training?
For some of the different yes.
Okay. Finally, prior to today, when is the last time you had any communication or interaction with Colonel Lamar Davis?
I only came to see his assistant yesterday.
No, not his assistant. I want to be crystal clear. When is the last time you had any direct communication or interaction with Colonel Lamar Davis directly via in-person, text message, telephone, electronic mail, any form of communication? When have you personally had any direct communication with Colonel Lamar Davis prior to today?
Yesterday, I came to see his assistant, and I saw him. I said, "Good morning, sir."
And the only communication that the two of you had was good morning.
That's correct.
You did not talk about this hearing at all.
No, sir.
When is the last time you had any direct communication, either in person, via telephone, via electronic mail, text message, or any other form of communication with Lieutenant Colonel Doug Kane prior to today?
Today, outside in the
No,
hallway.
prior to today. When was the last time you had any type of communication with them?
Probably about a few days ago. Just good morning, say.
Just good morning.
That's it.
You never discussed this hearing
That's correct.
or this investigation.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Representative Villio.
Mr. Lee,
Yes,
can you produce for this committee any document showing the reactivation of phones within the state police?
What do you mean reactivate? Like reactivate the number or
Reactivate a phone once a phone has been canceled, as you've discussed,
Okay, yes, ma'am.
and then it's been reactivated to reissue. Can you produce to this committee, not this minute, but can you produce to this committee any record that would evidence the reactivation of cell phones?
On the 3 number,
On any cell phones, Mr. Lee?
I don't remember reactivate the same number back to anybody.
Right, because y'all never reissue the phones, correct?
When we cancel the number, then the number will be completely done. Yes, ma'am.
You never reissue the phones, Mr. Lee, is that correct? So you don't have any records evidencing reactivation? That's the question.
I will use the phone in 2020 during the COVID. Yes.
And so do you have records that evidence the reactivation of those phones?
No, ma'am.
Didn't think so. Thank you.
All righty, Mr. Lee. Look, we thank you for testifying. I know it's a difficult thing to do to come here and answer these questions. I appreciate you coming, and thank you. Have a good afternoon.